Second. So, Mr. Ketan Bhokre, he is an aerospace engineer, but then he entered the software industry and he has already done two startups, which are like Chainworks. Uh, and he was having one of the biggest clientele in India, Mumbai Municipal Corporation, which handles almost 12 million people. And Mumbai is one of the biggest metropolitan city in India as well as in the world. And then he has one more startup, and currently he is a CTO in Urban Rise. So he has done a lot many stuffs related to app development, especially related to the field of blockchain, metaverse, AI. And his new project is pretty interesting, which is in news also, where people are using AI for humanoids. And also he's an interesting guy, especially from technical perspective and then the business perspective also. So I'll now give the control to Mr. Bhokre. And so, Ketan, you can take the control and start the session.
Can you please confirm how much time we have? I can't hear you.
What happened?
So how much time for the session?
You can't hear me.
I can hear you. How much time we have for the session?
Actually, your can you check your mic, because we cannot get your voice. Yeah, just use the normal mic. No, we can't hear you. Just maybe your mic is off. Just check your laptop.
Yeah, yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. Now you are audible.
Sure. So, thanks for the intro, Pawan. I was just asking how much time do we have for the session?
So the session, like the class is for 3 hours, 10 to 1. So if you want more than 1 hour 30 minutes, you can take it, because the session is from 10 to 1.
Sure, sure. Okay.
Okay.
So thanks for that, Pawan. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
Uh, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Sure. So thanks for that, Pawan. Hello, all of the class, everybody in the class. So basically, I'm Ketan. I have about 10 years experience in software development, primarily in new tech like blockchain, a little bit in AI, and a little bit in metaverse, so on and so forth. I've done quite a few apps and for services for governments, for private companies, so on and so forth. And we also have built a couple of products in house. So now moving on to the current session. So Pawan just we were just having a discussion with Pawan about the class and all that. So I was asked to make a presentation about fintech, specifically how ML can be used in fintech. And since I have my expertise in hands-on development, I thought it would be a good idea if we can just go ahead with, actually building an app to see what it looks like, right? So now that's what I'd want to discuss. So I built a small app which uses ML in fintech. I want to first demo the app, and then we'll go through the process of actually building the app and going into production end to end live. So at any point, if anyone has any questions, please stop me at that point, and you can ask me any questions, and we can get that resolved. So now coming to the app itself, the app we are building today, it's called Risk Radar. So it's a simple ML app which takes the payment history of users and then tells if the person will default on if you give them a credit, right? So I'll just show a sample of the app. So it's hosted here, riskradar.realitylabs.com. So the whole concept is that you have a list of users. This is an app used by enterprise, and you have a list of users. For any user, if you click on them, if you click on that user, you can get the details of the user. What is the name, age, gender, education, are they married or not, so on and so forth. And you can see the payment history. So so for example, have you given some credit to the user for this particular user? You're given you bill them about 18,000 rupees or dollars or which euros, whichever it is, and they paid only 763 dollars for that particular month. So along with the bill amount and the amount that they are repaid, we also have details about if the person has delayed the payment for that particular month. For example, in April, you can see that the bill of the person was $18,000, $18,203, and the person paid back some $763, and they paid it on time. So the payment delay is zero. However, on August, this particular person was billed some $50,000 and they paid only $5, but they paid this $5 with a delay of 3 months, right? So we have this history of multiple users, about 30,000 users, and then based on we are able to see the history of the historical payments of the person, and based on that history, we are able to get a prediction about if we give a credit to this person, are they likely to default it or are they likely to pay it back. So when I click this button, I can see that it says the user is likely to pay back the payment that's given to them, and then the confidence that the model has is about zero point 0.9. Similarly, for different users, yeah, so for different users we can get details about them, and we can also get um, some confidence that to see if the user, if we give them a credit, will they pay it back on time, right? So this is a simple app, one page app, and we'll build all of this end to end, and we'll just go through all the tech that is involved in this. Now, this app itself, it's a small app. It's just one page. However, I've to since we're building this app end to end, I want to keep this session interactive. It'll be better if we can have a two-way conversation. And this is the general flow that I'll be following for this whole discussion. So first, I'll be giving an overview of whatever concept we are talking about, and then I'll be going through some code to actually show if we are coding it, how you'd be doing that, and then I'll be assigning some tasks to you. So these are basic simple tasks like maybe cloning a GitHub repo, or writing some 4 5 lines of code, so on and so forth. The whole idea here is that if you work on it, you are more likely to remember whatever task is given to you. And after all of this is done, we'll also talk about consideration. So, which is while we're building a small app, if you plan on, let's say, taking this and making it into your own business, so what are the different considerations that you'll have to keep in mind? So, is it security? Is it scaling? So on and so forth. So, basically, what are the things that you might face in the future if you are planning to go ahead with productionizing this app? Right, so this is the discussion format that we'll be following for the whole lecture. Now a little bit about the tech stack that we are using. So a lot of these you must also already be familiar with it. I've gotten to know that you already have some course on machine learning, and you already done some projects on Flask, Heroku, so on and so forth. So to build this app, this is the stack that we'll be using. We'll be using scikit-learn to build our ML model, our classification model, and this model will integrate it with will expose it to the public using a Flask server. And this server, to make it accessible to public, will deploy it on Heroku, Heroku Cloud. And then to store the data, we'll be using MySQL. Again, we'll be using a managed MySQL service that completes our backend. And then for the front end part, while we'll not be building the whole Next.js end to end, we'll just give an introduction of what the front end looks like and how you would integrate your backend with the front end. So the front end is built in Next.js. It's a framework for building um, uh, full stack apps. And the front end itself is hosted on AWS Amplify. Again, it's a service by AWS for to make your front end development easier. Now, all of these technologies, our whole code base, we'll manage it using GitHub. Again, GitHub, because we want to explore CI/CD aspects of it, which is how do you simplify your deployment process, so on and so forth. So this is the stack that we'll be using. So we'll be going into one by one, more in depth, and then we can discuss about that. Now, first beginning with the workflow of the app. So you can see that this is the app. We can select a user. We can select a user, get the details, and to get a prediction. So we'll have to, when we click on a default prediction, a request goes to the backend, and then a prediction is done through an ML, and then you get it in the front end. So while this is what you see in the front end, behind the scenes, this is the workflow that happens. The green dot that you see here near the laptop, that's the request that the user is initiating when they click a button. And when they click a button, the request goes to the Flask app. From there, it gets the details from the MySQL database. It uses the details to send it to that the AI model that we have built, and that AI model returns a prediction, which again Flask returns it back to the user. So all of this happens when you click your predict button, and all of this happens in the backend. So we'll be building all of this part by part. We'll be exploring different sections that are involved in this, and we'll also explore different skill sets that are needed if you want to make a productionalized app, which you can put out in the market. Now, if we want to build this app, we in general have four big tasks that we need to finish, that we have to make complete. So, and of while we are building this app, it's one person building this app currently, and since it's a small app, one person is able to build this app. In production, these are the tasks that are generally taken over by different people, right? So we'll be talking about training your model. We'll be talking about deploying your model on Flask app and on Heroku, and we'll be talking about how to integrate your app with a database, and then we'll also talk about integrating your app with your front end. So we'll be covering all these four tasks one by one. Again, as I mentioned, now will be only one person working on this app, but in production, these are multiple skill sets, and this is done by multiple people. You'd want multiple people to be working on this. Right. So first about model training. This app that you'd want to build, so it starts with the idea that you have. It could be, you could come up with an idea, maybe to, let's say, identify any fraudulent transactions, or you might come up with an idea about to calculate the how much premium should a user pay for insurance based on multiple historical evidence, historical parameters, so on and so forth. Or maybe you'd want to build some kind of an LLM integrated app, so something that uses Llama, OpenAI, any other LLMs you might want to use in an app, and want to give an agent based experience to the customer. So all of this core logic in an ML app is generally taken up by the model. So these are basic. It could be something basic, a basic model, something like a decision tree or an XGBoost, or any classification models, k-means. It could be any basic model, or it can also be some super complex neural networks, or LSTMs, transformers. It can be anything. But this AI will be the core of your business, and then uh, if you want to build an AI based app, the first thing that you'd want to think about is how do you train your app, right? So if you already have access to some public or proprietary data, if you already have some non AI enabled service, that would be a good starting point for you to get the data on which you can train your model, right? So maybe you have some financial services, publicly available financial services, or some other data. A good starting point would be to use the data to train your model. Or if you're just starting out, another good starting point would be to explore public data sets. Multiple data sets are available in the public. For example, you can just search for Kaggle data sets. So this is a platform where you can do multiple ML related tasks, and then you have multiple data sets, you know, for various things. You can just search for data sets here, and you'll be able to get them. So Kaggle could be one. Hugging Face is another platform which has data sets. And if you're looking for publicly available government data, you can also search for your particular government's data. So, for example, India has data.gov.in, where we find data about different agriculture, different sectors. Similarly, Ireland also has multiple data sets. You can just search for Ireland data sets and you'll get multiple portals where government has open sourced a lot of data for you to build your apps, right? So now your data, you can have your private data, you can use a public data set, and then you'll train your model. For our particular use case, what we'll be doing is we'll be taking a user's payment history and we'll be building a classification model to understand if we give a credit to the user, are they likely to default in the credit, or are they likely to pay off, the credit? The same thing that we've seen in the fintech. Right. So now we jump into the code. So the main things that you want to think about when you are starting to train your data is, firstly, obviously, we want to compile the data. We want to understand where we can get the relevant data that will solve our problem. And then we want to train our model and then integrate this whatever model that we have built into Python service. So one key point to note here is this part of the application development, where we are getting the data sets and then training the model and all of that. This is done by your scientist. So it could be a data scientist, it could be an applied scientist, so a person who has a lot of experience in analyzing different, you know, algorithms, running different ex- experiments. So this will be the person who will be working on this section. Right. So to code our app, first step, we'll have to compile relevant data. So to do that, what we'll do is that instead of searching in Google, we'll use an AI search engine. So there's an AI search engine called Perplexity, which is, you can think of it as AI-enabled version of Google, where instead of asking for key terms, you can ask questions in natural language. It will give you relevant answers. So I'll just ask it. I want to build a uh, classification model. Uh, and what data. So I'll just ask a question in natural language. So if I ask the same question in natural language, I'm less likely to get responses in Google. And if I ask the same question, let's say in ChatGPT or
Ketan, one student has one question. Just a
Sorry,
second.
what's the AI he's using now? What's the AI?
it's called Perplexity AI.
Perplexity AI.
Sorry, could you spell it, please?
PER. He's writing there. You can see. You
Let me
can see
just.
on your screen. It
Alright,
will
sorry,
be
just one
pretty
moment. Yeah, I'm
clear.
gonna check on the screen.
Can you see?
Just want to share with everybody. Perplexity. Good, thank you so much.
Yep. Yes, you can proceed now.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, no problem. So yeah, so the good thing about Perplexity is if I ask the same question to Google, Google is less likely to answer that to me because Google works on keywords. And if I ask the same question to, let's say, ChatGPT, or let's say I ask it to Claude, it is less likely to give me correct answers because ChatGPT can hallucinate. It can give you responses which are not actually true. Perplexity is a platform which will take your queries, understand it, and give you answers which are actually true without hallucinating. So I asked it the question in natural language, and I got multiple data sets. So different data sets to achieve the task that I'm trying to do. And as you can see here, for all the data sets, I also get the source from which I can get them. So this is a good thing about Perplexity, which I will not be getting it. I mean, I'll be less likely to get it correctly using ChatGPT. So for now, we'll be going ahead with this data set, credit card default data set, which is available in multiple places. So this is one place where we can get the data set. Yeah. So this is the source of the data set. It is open source by UCI machine learning. You can find multiple other data sets here. So some details about the data set here, and I'll be downloading it. So I've already done all of this. So I'll just quickly switch to my code. Yeah. So once I download the data set and I bring it into my project, I'd want to run my experiments on it. I'd want to run EDA. I want to see if I'm able to do some predictions on it and all that. So for that, as a scientist, I mean, as a person taking the role of a scientist, I'll be running a Jupyter notebook. So IPYNB are Jupyter notebook files. So instead of running it as a traditional .py file, I'll be running it as a Jupyter notebook. So I'll quickly import the data, and then a little bit about the data set. So this data set has details of credit card payment defaults, of of some firm in Taiwan. So it has details about different users' demographics, like what is the gender, what is the education, what is the marital status, what is the age, so on and so forth. And it also has details of the payment history, which is what, like the columns that is seen in our app. Like the columns we've seen in the app. So what was the bill amount for a particular month, and how much have they paid back, and then did they delay the payment in that particular month, so on and so forth. So we have that data, in coded format. Bill amount is how much was the person billed. Payment delay is have they delayed the payment. So if the value is one, which means for that particular month they delayed the payment by 1 month, so on and so forth. Paid amount is how much amount have they paid back, and we get these details for 6 months from April to September 2005. The target variable for this is, did the person default the payment? So one is yes, they did default the payment, and zero is no, they did not default the payment. Uh, so we'll just go ahead with simple analysis. So this is how you'll be able to see the data, in data frame. I'm assuming that you already have done some amount of basic data processing, so on and so forth. So you can get the data, see it in a data frame. You can have a look at all the columns, and then you can have some idea of what data format they are. So is it int, is it float, so on and so forth. You can get some details by just doing df.info. So normally after this, you would be doing EDA, exploratory data analysis, to see if there is different things, like is there an imbalance in the classes, or can you merge any columns? Can you do some kind of PCA, so on and so forth. But for the purpose of this discussion, since we are not going too much into ML, I'll just skip the EDA part. So now you have data, the data, you have loaded the data, and then next you'll move on to train your model, right? For this discussion, we'll be going out with a decision tree. Again, your model could be a neural net, or it could be XGBoost, or any other ensemble method, or whichever way it is. Our target column, the thing that we want to predict is, did the user default on the payment? So I'll just take that column in here, and we'll use all the other columns except the user ID, obviously, to yes. So I'll just paste it here to make it quick. Yeah. So all our columns except the user ID, they go into our feature columns. So the reason why we are not taking user ID is because, again, user ID is a variable that's just used to identify the user, and we probably would not be able to predict anything out of the single number which identifies the user. So we don't take the user ID, uh, and then we sorry, we define our data sets. X, again, going with the tradition, X is our features, Y is our target variable, and then we split the data into uh, plain test split. say, yeah. So we split it into train test. That's split. We have, this is our training set, 24,000 rows. It's our it's a prediction target variable of our training set. Then we run through a decision tree, and instead of just running through one model with one parameter, I'm just running it through a grid search CV, which basically tries out different parameters inside your decision tree so that you can get your best result. You can give all the parameters you wanted to test out in this um, param grid. What is the maximum depth of the tree that you want to test? What are the criterion in which you want to split your data, maximum leaf nodes, so on and so forth. So we used our grid search to get our estimator, and we've seen that a decision tree with this maximum leaf nodes 10 seems to be the best model that we have when we consider accuracy to be our metric. And the best accuracy that we got was some
Ketan, just 1 second. One question from a student.
So,
You
sorry,
can
can we ask?
unmute. Yeah,
Should I
unmute
just
yourself.
unmute? Is it
Yeah.
better?
sure.
Sorry, can fast. I'm just
Okay, say.
should I just
Yep.
is that better? Do you hear me, Kiran?
I'm getting an echo. Could you please repeat the question?
No, he does no.
No, he's coming from here. So 1 second, just ask him a question.
Should I just ask him, like, do you hear me now, Kitan?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So my question is, did you run before this making distributed? Did you run so many models, and then you decided to pick up this decision tree model according to the accuracy, or was it just the best model that you could? Maybe you tried like the AI to just come up with the best model to get the best accuracy of it. I don't know if you get what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. So thanks for that question. So basically, if you're asking me if I've gone through multiple models, or if I've asked the AI to come up with the best model. So for this particular session, I did not train multiple models,
Okay.
but normally in production, you'd want to go with, a lot of data pre-processing. You'd want to change your variables. There's something called standard scaling, so on and so forth. You'd go through multiple steps to clean your data first, and then you would want to run with multiple models. However, for this particular discussion, since we are not going too much into ML models, I did not go through all those steps, and I just went ahead with decision tree. However, that also comes with a caveat, which is that I could have used any kind of classifier, but however, generally we found that for tabular data, while the best performance you get it by using neural networks, we've seen that after neural networks, you'll get similar performance with tree-based models. So it could be decision tree, or better something like XGBoost and simple models like XGBoost, so on and so forth. From our experience, we found that if you're talking about tabular data, the best result you'll get if you use number one if you use neural networks, or after neural networks, if you use decision trees or tree-based models, you get best results. So I just went ahead with the heuristic and added a decision tree for now.
One more question, please. Actually, two more questions. Is it because the output is binary here? So the best thing would be decision tree. And another question: what's the accuracy usually you go for to validate a model and say, well, this is the best. We're just going to go with it. Is it 90 or over 90, or will you be fine with 85? Like, when do you know maybe the data is not enough? Where do you know that if you get more data, like more inputs, you get better accuracy? So yeah, I'm just asking
Yeah.
about how do you take decisions?
Absolutely. So that's a nice question. Now, if you're asking, is it because that it is binary that I've chosen decision tree? The answer is no. We have tested multiple other regression models, which is, you want to predict something like how many clicks would you get on your ad if you're running it, right? So we've trained multiple regression models as well on neural networks, LSTMs, decision trees, and multiple models. And we've generally seen that for tabular data, decision trees have worked well, especially XGBoost, and there's a model called LightGBM. So we've generally found that for tabular data, decision trees, I mean, tree-based models seem to be working well. So to answer your first question, it's not. I mean, I've used decision tree not because it's a classification model. Even if it were a regression model, I would have used decision tree because my experience is that typically decision trees give or tree-based models give me better results, right? Now
Okay.
coming to the accuracy, that's actually an you know it's actually an interesting and more involved question because the accuracy that you want to get actually depends on your business use case, right? Now if you're building an app, let's say, to predict if you want to give a loan to a person or not, if you want to predict if the person will um, mm, likely to default on your payment or not, you
Okay.
probably would want to be on the higher side of accuracy, meaning you want to be on a side where if the model says that, hey, look, this person uh, um, will not default on your payment,
Mm.
uh, the it should be more accurate, right? You probably would want to be on a safer side where even if a person, the model doesn't is not very sure if the person will default on your payment or not, you want it to say, hey, look, I'm not sure of if this person will default or not, but I'll be on the safer side and just tell that, hey, look, this person, don't please don't give any credit to them, right?
Okay.
On the other side, let's say you're building some kind of a trivial application like, given the data, will the person click on the ad or not, right? So there's not much of stakes. There's not much which is at stake here, right? If the model predicts that, hey, look, if you do this, then the person is likely to click. But I'm not very sure. You still want the model to err on the side of saying that, uh, to say that, look, I think the person uh, you know will click it, even though I'm not quite sure, right? So
Okay.
there you're okay with not too much accuracy, right? So to answer your question, the best accuracy that you want to get, it actually depends on the business that you want to get. And if you're talking about fintech, you want to be more sure. How sure would you want to be? It will be probably coming from your business. There are different ways to think about it structurally, in a structure. So there are different metrics like confusion matrix, which will tell you, which will take you things like false positives, false negatives, true positives, true negatives, and you also have tools like AOCR, AOC, ROC curves.
Yeah.
But again, that will be something that will be covered in in a machine learning lecture. But just so that just to inform that there are tools out there, which can make you think about it structurally,
Yeah.
right? So the accuracy depends on your business use case, and
Okay.
in fintech probably would want to be more sure about the decisions that you're taking with the model,
All right. Thank you
right?
so much.
So yeah, so now we have taken the data, downloaded it, we trained a model, and then we want to just see if our model is able to predict if the person will default or not. So what we do is from our test entries, we just take a single entry, which is details about one user, some two triple four seven, who has all these parameters, and we just want to see if this person want if you run a estimator based on it, does the model think that the person will default or not? Here, here you can see that the model says that, I mean, the best estimator, the model with the best parameters, it says that if I take this person, the target variable is zero, which means, right, again go back to the definitions of the columns, which means that the model thinks that the person is less likely to default on the payment. And we'd also want to know what is the confidence the model has. What's the confidence the model has that the person is what's the confidence that the person has, that the person is less likely to do the less likely to default at the prediction. So we can see that the model is fairly confident that the person is again less likely to 0.11. I mean, the model thinks that the person is less likely to default. The probability is minus. I think there is some minus somehow it got in. So less likely to default on the payment. So this is a part where the which is taken up by machine learning engineers. So they take the details, they take the data, they run multiple experiments on the data, and then they see if and they find out what is the best model with which they can predict, if the person will default or not, and then they get the probabilities for that. Once this is done, I have this model sitting in my Jupyter notebook, but I want this model to be integrated in a server. So, which is, I want this to be running in an application. Now, the way to do that is, if I have this data inside the Jupyter notebook, this model inside the Jupyter notebook, I'll not be able to share it with anybody else. So I'd use something called as joblib. So joblib is a library with which which has a function to basically export any kind of Python object, right? So it can be any model, it can be any other Python object that you created out of you created in your Python code. It can be anything. So joblib allows you to export your model into a file. Joblib is one, and you also have an alternative called pickle. But when you're talking about machine learning models, generally you'd want to go for joblib because the performance that it gives is better. So I just import joblib, and then I'm asking joblib to export my model to this file called risk radar model. So the moment I do this, you can see that my model file has been generated. Again, it's a generic serialized model. This model, you can give it to anybody, you can share it with anyone, and they can again use joblib to sort of import it in the code, and then they can do the prediction. To show that, what we do is that the model that we have exported, we just load it again into the code using joblib. So M is where I'm storing the model, and I'm just doing the prediction again based on the single entry. Yeah, based on the single entry that I've done. So I've taken a single entry, and then I'm just running the predict probe A, the same things that I've done earlier, and I'm able to get the prediction and the confidence for that, after exporting the model also. So this covers the job of the machine learning engineer. So once this is done, the machine learning engineer takes this file, sends it to your backend engineer. They can email it, they can send it on WhatsApp, Slack, whichever it is. While they're not suggested, you can basically take the file and send it to your backend engineer any way you want. For our use case, what we'll do is that I'll just open. I'll wear the hat of the um, backend engineer, and I'll open my code, and I'll work on integrating the data, integrating my backend service with the model that the scientist has given me. So this is the method that I'll be using. So basically, it takes user data of one user, and it gives me prediction about are they likely to default on my loan, and what is the confidence that the model has that they are likely to default on loan. So again, I've just written it as a template. So for the benefit of time, I'll just quickly load this um, into a data frame. Put this in an array. So first we are loading the data into a data frame, and then we'll do the same thing that we have done earlier in our notebook, which is
So now we're applying the model we used on on the data you get from the application, right?
thus. Could you please repeat the question?
Sorry. So now you actually applying the model into your software.
That's correct. That's correct. So the job that is
So
done on the notebook.
the user data here, it's from your from the from the software, from the entry from the software.
That's correct.
Oh,
That's
this is
correct. So
software.
training we have done on historical data on a data set that we got on the internet, but then now we are taking whatever model that is trained and we are
We're
integrating into
applying
our software.
to make predictions. Okay, cool.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
here we'll be taking data that we'll be getting from our users. If you have historical data, you can use that, or if there is a new user who is, or if you have a new application with which you can get the data, you can use that, so on and so on. So we take the model, and then I'm taking the role of the backend engineer, and then I'm integrating that model into my code, right? So we do the same thing again. We load the model. Again, we'll use joblib to load the model, and then since we are expecting predictions, we do the same thing that we do with any decision tree classifier. Again, just to be clear, this dot predict probe, so on and so forth. These are not methods specific for joblib. These are the methods that are coming from decision tree, right? So whatever methods that we did here, uh, so whatever methods that we did here, which is, we've taken the decision tree and then we predicted it and got the prediction probabilities. It is the same methods that we're using here, right? So tomorrow, let's say instead of using decision tree, use some other, maybe linear regression, logistic regression, whichever library you'll be using. You'll be able to call the same methods on the file that you load with your joblib. So the predict and predict probe, these are not methods specific for joblib. This is coming from the decision tree that you have trained, right? So we'll do our model. Name of our model is square. Let's copy this. Model. Since it's only one prediction, I'm just doing item, which means if I do a predict, I'll just get one prediction, and item just takes that prediction out.
Yeah.
Yes. Just do max of this. So we have a prediction and we have the confidence, and we return it back. So again, this is simple. I've not yet gotten into Flask or anything like that. This is a simple, typical Python server, a Python app, and I'm just writing one method where it takes user data and then it gives me back the prediction and the confidence. Now, for the purpose of testing, what I'll do is that for this user data, I'll take one entry from um, the test set and I'll just give it, pass it through this method. In your production, you'd again, as you just discussed, you'd want this data to come from your app, your users, or whichever way it is. But for now, since we don't have data, we'll just be taking one sample um, data instance from your test set, and we'll be using that to check if our code is working correctly or not, right? So this is details of one person. So yeah, so we've taken details of one person, and then we go ahead and call this predict one method by giving this person's data. Just scroll all the way down. We'll just pass this a single person's data. Yeah. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the single. Rather, I'll just do this. It'll be easier. Basically, what I'm doing now is I'm taking one person's data and then passing it in the predict one method that we just written. This is the testing part. We've now that we've integrated the model into our application, we want to see if it is working correctly or not. So I've taken the data and I'm passing this to this function. I'll just run this. To run this, you can use this run Python file so that you can run this file's code. Yeah, so you can see that the model is actually returning me some valid data, which is it is saying that it thinks that the prediction is that the person will not default, and the confidence that it has is 0.89, right? So which gives me confidence that hey, look, whatever code I've written, it works, right? So this is the part. All this that you discussed was the ML training part. So we've taken the data, we've trained the model, and then the scientist gives a model to the backend engineer. The backend engineer integrates that model into their Python service and tests to see if the model is coming out correctly, right?
Yes.
uh, I'll just stop here, and if anyone has any questions, if you want to elaborate, if you want me to elaborate on any part of it, I'll be happy to take the questions.
So, any questions?
Should we? No, no. It's actually pretty clear. Thank you so much. So we actually get to have this repository on GitHub.
No, he will come and discuss like.
All right. Thank you
So,
so much.
Ketan, you can proceed. They are fine.
Yeah, go ahead. We're fine. All good.
Sure. So now we've discussed about how to do that. Now coming to the tasks, I think it'll be good if we can do kind of a hands-on session.
Yeah.
So all this information, all the code that you're seeing, I've hosted it on GitHub.
Oh,
So
thank
and I've made it public. It is available on this link, github.com kbokre risk data server template. I'll be sharing this on the chat.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Um, I'll be sharing this on the chat. And I'd want you, as a task, I want you to clone this repository. Again, I've been told that training about, I mean, some discussion about GitHub was already done. So I'd want you to run
Close
this
the
uh,
book.
run this repository and then install the dependencies. To install the dependency, you'll have to run this command. Yep. Install. I want you to run this, clone the repository, install the dependencies, and then run the model, the Python model file line by line, just to see if you are able to run the code or not, right? So that's one part. Cloning the GitHub repository is one part. Apart from that, you would have seen that when I'm typing here, let's say I want to type something here.
Just check on the chat this link.
Okay, I'm not sure. This just works intermittently. So basically, I'm using a coding assistant. It's called Cody. So basically, what it does is that instead of me having to write the whole code, I can just write some comment and it'll generate the code for me. So that makes development a lot simpler. While you can search documentation, you can go through ask ChatGPT and all that. Having these assistants, installing them would make life much simpler for a developer.
How do you clone
So, so for
So
that
go to
second task,
GitHub.
it? I want to.
So the Ketan, can you show them how to clone because
Yeah,
they are
sorry,
having.
I did a long time ago. I'm trying to remember, but I'm on
yeah.
GitHub already. So we're on GitHub.
Just show them
Uh,
how to clone.
Yeah.
so okay,
Can you show them
Pavan.
step by step so that.
Yeah, Pavan, can you please confirm if SSH keys are added on the laptops?
Pardon?
Uh, are the SSH keys added on everybody's laptops? You
Yes,
would
yes,
need
we have.
SSH keys.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah, yeah,
configured.
they have SSH keys.
Oh, that's very nice. That makes my life easier. So you'll have to go to GitHub on the link that I shared. Click on this green code button and then click on SSH.
SSH.
You're Yeah,
Yeah.
SSH, and then you'll have to click on the copy button here.
We don't have
Uh,
SSH. I have SSH, but he doesn't have My friend here doesn't have SSH. I
Could you
have
please
SSH. So
repeat?
look, I have it. You
Yeah, we'll sort out your issue,
okay?
but Ketan, you proceed, else
And
we'll be
then,
short of
all right,
time.
and then
Yep.
I press and copy here.
Yes. So you want to copy this, and
Okay, I
then
did.
you want to go to your desktop or some other place where you want to put the app.
I have desktop. So what should I do?
Yeah. So you'd want to open. I mean, if you're using a Mac, you can do it on your terminal, or if you're using Windows, you'll have to open Git Bash
Git bash.
and then do Git.
Git clone.
Yeah. So I'll.
Should I do it as an administrator or doesn't know?
Yep.
Yeah. You have to do Git clone and then paste the link that you
Git
copied.
clone and then paste the command.
Just 1 minute.
I think you can do this also using GitHub desktop.
Yes. If you have GitHub desktop, that'll
Can
make
you
your
just
life.
show them how to do on GitHub desktop? It will be easier for them.
What did you
I'll see
clone?
if I
Open,
have.
yeah, so this the code is git clone and paste that. Git
Alright,
clone
okay.
is the
Git.
command and then paste that SSH
Alright,
link.
yeah. I did it. So
Yeah, if you
oh
want
yeah,
to do it, well,
it's
you can
doing
get
it.
it, or else you can go to GitHub desktop.
So it says, "Are you sure you want to continue connecting?" Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Other ways to use GitHub desktop.
So
Can you also
please,
show the GitHub desktop way?
it says, "Please make
Yeah.
sure to
I'll do that. But it's been a while since I used GitHub.
Oh,
I'm not I mean GitHub desktop. I'm not
yeah,
sure
yeah.
if
So most of the programmers they use that shell command rather than
So how
using
should
that.
I do to check that it's there?
Wait, he will show you. He's just showing you.
I did it on the bash.
Yep. So it's not throwing any error.
It's just saying, "Could you not read remote was doing warning family algorithm? Make sure you have the correct access rights."
that means your SSH keys probably are not configured. A good way would be to use GitHub desktop actually.
All right,
Let me
I have
just
it. I have it.
yes. So GitHub desktop. It's been a while since I used it. Let me just see if I can.
It says open with the. There's an option where you can open it with GitHub. Just oh yeah, that's it. I've done it. I knew
Yep.
how to do it because there's an option where you can open it with the GitHub desktop.
Yes. Yeah. So there
Yeah.
there should be.
Go back to the GitHub. So click
Yeah.
on
There seems to be an option to
Yes,
open.
open with a
the
GitHub desktop.
That's it. And then it says clone. It says you press.
You have not installed GitHub desktop. So for him, it's not showing because he is using Git client.
Oh,
It's okay. We
I
can
have it.
proceed
I have it
further.
now. You can, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So
Fine, Ketan will be short of time. So you have lot
Yeah,
many
go
things
ahead.
to
Sorry
cover.
for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we do.
no
So
problem.
because we are recording here at our end, in case if you are having issue doing that, so we can discuss once you're trying, okay?
No
And
problem. So
then
yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
pip installation, I think you know how to do pip install
Yeah,
on
we do.
VS Code, and then using the enabling extensions and all we have covered on VS Code, so they know how to add extension. Okay,
Okay.
okay, so
Yeah.
then you can proceed further.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, so the steps would be to just download your the repository. Ideally, you'd want to set up your SSH keys to clone your repository, or you can use GitHub Desktop. It's been a while since I used GitHub Desktop, so I'm not quite sure. I'll have to just work on it to see if I can find the correct way. But once you clone it, you can do pip install to install all the libraries that are needed. And then this is one suggestion to make your coding journey easier. So if you install an assistant, so there are multiple Google GitHub has another assistant called GitHub Copilot. uh, so you have multiple assistants, which what they basically do is that when you're writing your code, it will give you suggestions about, hey, look, is this what you're thinking about? And then if you think that that's right, you can just go ahead and confirm that. It makes all your coding journey like a lot simpler. So while there is GitHub Copilot, it's a paid option. So for the purpose of this lecture, I'm just going ahead with with this plugin called Kodi. You can find it on this link, sourcegraph/Kodi. Right. Moving on. Now, basically, we have taken the job of, I mean, we have taken up the role of the machine learning engineer, trained the model, downloaded the data, trained the model, and then given it to a backend engineer who has integrated model in their code and then tested it out. And we've seen that the results are coming correct, right? Now, whatever we have done now, it's a very simplistic version of what you would see in production, right? So for example, like we've discussed, we did not try out multiple models. We did not try out different parameters. I mean, while we did some grid search, we did not try out multiple parameters, hyperparameters for our models. There, and we did not even version our model, right? So that would cause a lot of problems in production, because in production you'd not be having one model. Your model will always be made better. There'll be different versions of the model. Right now you would think that maybe decision tree is the best model for you, and then you train a little bit more, and then you find out that, hey, look, maybe it's not decision tree, we'll have to go for some kind of ensemble model. Or you train more, and then you'll get to know that, hey, look, it's not ensemble model, we want to go with neural nets, and the parameters that we have will not be sufficient. If we add like one or two more parameters, we'll get a better prediction, right? So that's a process. I mean, basically, using the model itself is a process, and it's actually never ending. You want to try out different versions and then see what is giving you better results. Now, since we are using multiple versions of the model, we want a good way to track the versions of the models, and for that, to do that, by using joblib, you'll not be able to maintain the versions. So there are libraries like MLflow which will help you keep track of what is a version of the model that you've just trained. So in production, you'll probably not be going with joblib or pickle. You'll be going with a more sophisticated framework like MLflow, and there are a few others like that. There's one called kubeflow, so on and so forth. And then in production, for now, we have trained it on a publicly available data set, which is coming from UCIML repository. However, in production, the data will not be static. As in when people keep using your application, you'll be getting more and more data, live data, and the data you'll be storing in your application. And if you want your model to be better, you'd want to keep training your model on the data so that it gives better predictions, and your model is also up to date with uh, your data. So maybe uh, earlier at a particular point in time, people were defaulting more. Maybe it's something like COVID or something that has happened, and people have started defaulting more. But now people are not defaulting on the payments, because people, I mean, everybody is able to pay off their credits, so on and so forth. So since the external conditions have changed, the model that you trained on, let's say data that you gathered during COVID, might not be very relevant now. So you would also want your model to be relevant at all points in time. For that, you'd want to do a continuous integration from your data with your model, meaning as and when you get a model, you want to keep on retraining your data. To do that, again, there are a lot of tools available. A simple tool to do that is something called DVC, uh, which is short form for data version control, which will help you keep versions of the data and then also keep on retraining your model. So that's something that you probably want to use in production. And yeah, and the last point is coming to the models. You probably want to not go with simple models. You probably since it's a time series kind of a data that we're using, you probably would want to use something like LSTMs, or more complex data which can deal with the particular use case that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are the considerations that you'd have if you'd want to take your model into production. Right. So yeah, so we are done with the model training. Next, I mean, this was actually the biggest part. After model training, we handed over our model to our backend developer. Backend developer has integrated it in the service, and they have tested that the model is working out correctly with the sample data. The next thing that we'd want to do is we want to expose this model to the world, meaning I'd want somebody else to be able to invoke this model.
Yeah.
To do that, I'd integrate this model with a Flask server, and then see that I'm able to basically call the model. And not only that, I'll next step as a next step, I'll hand over that Flask server to a DevOps person who will be deploying this model into Heroku. So I'll be showing all of that next. Yeah. So the model is built, it is tested. Now we want to expose it to the world. To do that, if it is sitting only on your laptop, nobody would be able to access it. However, if you want to make it accessible to public, you'd want to integrate it with a server. So a server again allows user to open the model using something called as get requests and post requests. And it need not be a Flask server. There are many servers out there. Flask is one. Fast API is another better alternative. And there are servers in other languages as well in Node.js. So there's an Express server, um, there's a Happy servers, multiple servers out there. But for the purpose of this discussion, we'll just be going ahead with the Flask server.
Flask. Okay.
So we'll be exposing our models prediction to public using a Flask server, and then we'll be deploying this to Heroku so that it will be available to anybody who wants to use the model. Right? Yeah. So first thing, set the server up. It's actually pretty easy. I have the code here, and all my server related code, I'm putting it in app.py. So yeah. So Flask is a server that we are will be using. So I'm just importing Flask. Defining the yeah. So this is it. So this is the code that you'd want to write just to have your server, up and running. So I've imported Flask. I've just defined a variable called name, and then I'm just doing app.run. So and then when I run this code, just the way I did it in service, the Flask server is up, and I can actually copy this code and then open it in the browser. Now, since we have not defined any routes here, any endpoints, you can see that when I open that link as is, it says not found. So we'll just fix that now. We'll create an endpoint. We'll create an so just return a hello world. I go back to the same URL, and then I just open it, and you can see that it says hello world. So basically, the different URLs that we want to open, we would want to define them. We would want to define them here, and then that will be made live in Flask. That's the basics of Flask. And now we've started a server. However, you can see that I cannot really, you sitting there. I mean, anybody who is not sitting here would not be able to open it because the URL says 127.0.0.1, and that's not something that's accessible to the public. But we want our app to be usable by anybody out there in the world. So for that reason, instead of deploying it locally, we would want to take this server that is running on our browser, on our computer, and we want to host it in some other server. So for that, we will be using Heroku. So I will be showing that. Right. So we are in Heroku. So before that, let me just push this. So I'll be going to Heroku. I'll create an app. Risk radar. I'd want to host this in Europe. So the region matters. I'll just come to that when I get to the front end, and then I'll connect it with my GitHub project. So I've already linked it with my GitHub. A search for risk radar.
Okay, so you commit your app to GitHub and then you give Hiroyuki the link to that GitHub.
That's correct. So
Okay.
this app, it is hosted on my GitHub. The link that I just shared.
Hmm.
So this app is hosted here on Risk Radar server template, and all code that I have done, I have committed it to Git, meaning I've sort of quote unquote uploaded the whole code to Git. You
Okay.
can see my changes here. Yeah. So this app last name. So these are the things that we just wrote, hello world and all that. I've
Okay.
uploaded to Git. Now I'm linking this. Now I'm linking this code to Heroku, meaning whatever is happening in this code, we want it to be deployed. So for
Okay.
that, I've linked my GitHub. It shows my name, my picture, my GitHub profile picture here. I'll search for Risk Radar, and this is the project where I'm updating the code. I'll connect to this, right? It understands the code, and then I'll just go ahead and deploy the branch,
Okay.
right?
So
Yeah. So
whatever changes you want to do on your Python script, and then you commit, and then automatically, since Heroku is connected to your GitHub link, automatically the app will display the changes.
that's correct. So that's actually an option. So if you want it to be automatically deployed, you can click on this button, enable automatic deploys,
Okay.
or you can always have a manual option where whenever someone uploads the code, maybe you've uploaded some 3 4 bug fixes or whichever way it is, and then after it's only after you're sure that the bug fixes are all done,
Okay.
you'd want to deploy it, you can make it manual as well.
So
It's totally up to you.
in the real world production process, once there is a change in a code, then they go for some unit testing, quality test before deploying.
That's correct. That's correct. You're obviously not deploy an app, as is. So
Yes, yes, yes.
your code will be shared by multiple people, and they'll be, pushing their code to their branches. So there'll be multiple branches, and from there, you'd want it to, merge it into your master branch, and probably you'd be having some automated tests, which means if the tests fail, you would not want it to deploy because you're the least last thing that you'd want is for your users to start seeing bugs, right?
Right.
So all that you would be doing in your production, but again, since it's a very small app that we are developing right now, I'm just going ahead with a simple, hello world and deploying it
Got
on
it.
Heroku.
Got it.
So yeah, so it takes about a minute or two. Looks like it's deployed. It takes about a minute or two to do that, and once I deployed, I can see a button here which says Open App.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see when I open it, it says Hello World,
So,
right?
just one question. This web address is automatically given by Heroku, or do we have a chance to change the name?
Yeah, so this web address is given by Heroku, but you also have a chance to change the name of this, which again goes into DNS configuration and all of that. Uh,
Okay, okay.
I'd rather not go there. So basically, you have to add something called as a CNAME record, which maps your basically your domain to this Heroku domain. Uh, I mean, in summary, it is possible, but I'd rather not want to go there because that's a domain of some other DevOps person. Maybe discussion of some other day,
Got it, got it.
right? Yeah. So now you've seen that I've just made the app and I've deployed it. Now, actually, I'll just share this URL. Now this will be available to everybody, right? Anybody
Yes.
can click on that link, and then I've added it in the chat.
Yes.
Anybody can click on the link, and you'll be able to open this, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
now, what we have done is we have gone from local to a global model. I mean, a global app, which is, your live now, so to say. So to show automatic deployments, what I'll do is I'll quickly enable automatic deployments, and then I'll make a change, right? I'll just make it change it from hello world to hey world, and then I'll upload it to Git.
So these are the set of commands to commit to Git.
That's correct. You have to add, commit, and then you push it to origin master.
Okay.
So I just pushed it to Git.
And it's automatically enabled, so automatically the app will reflect the change.
Yes.
Can you also show the app that you have developed in your Flask, how to connect that app?
I'm
The
sorry,
real app.
which app?
The re,
Yeah, yeah,
this Hey World is like a generic app. So can you show uh, the Python file that you have developed for credit
yeah, yeah.
scoring?
No, we'll build the whole thing.
Okay, 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 okay,
We'll build the whole thing. So whatever we've seen there, we will build it.
okay.
So I've just pushed it, which should.
Yeah. So if we click now, it has to change. It will take some time for deployment.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, let me just make another change.
So I have one question, Ketan. Let's say during deployment, if there is an issue with the code,
Mhm.
so the DevOps person is responsible to handle that stuff, and how does he get notified?
Oh yeah. So see, if you're working in production, the last thing that you'd want is the server to go down. So I mean, ideally, you don't want the server to go down. Once it is in production. So for that reason, you do a lot of. Mm, so yeah, it's saying deploy. Yeah, so you do a lot of checking before you actually push the code. However, once it gets deployed, it's the headache of the DevOps person, and the backend engineer that the server has gone down. So there are a couple of ways in which you can solve this if you face issues like that. Um I've not used Heroku extensively. I work on AWS, so I can talk about AWS. If you deploy the backend on AWS, so there are options where you can say that, say to AWS that, hey, look, if this server goes down, then please revert to an older version, right? So that your app
Okay.
doesn't break. And then, or you can always have an option of, if the server goes down, I don't care if people are, complaining, or, I don't care if there is any bugs and all that. Let it be down. I'll just bear with the consequences. You can either choose to do that, or again, AWS has an option to roll back to a version where it did not have an error, right?
Mhm.
Heroku probably would be having that, but since I'm more experienced, I work mostly on
Yeah, so
AWS.
one more question. So once you are using that virtual machine,
Mhm.
so in real case, the companies will be allocating some resources which will not remain static. It will be dynamic. So how is that optimized?
Could you please elaborate?
So the resource usage on the virtual machine
Yeah,
will be dynamic. It will depend upon how much people are
yeah,
using that
yeah,
application.
yeah.
How do you
Yeah,
optimize that?
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so basically now we have deployed the app. I've just pushed it. I did not push any button here, and I just
Hmm.
pushed my code to remote, and you can actually refresh the URL, and you can see that it says Hey World, right? So basically, this is the DevOps part. The
Okay,
developer is
yes,
coding it,
we can
from there you
see.
want to make it live. So this is the thing that DevOps engineer does. So yeah, so we have set the server up, we tested it locally, and then we have deployed it to Heroku. So what I'll do is, I mean, I've actually planned this as tasks, but since the code is
Yeah,
not
no,
being,
you just show it because I'm recording. The students can practice it afterwards.
Sure.
else we'll run short of time.
Sure, sure. So the first task was to actually edit, pull the code from Git, edit it, and then push it to show how a collaboration, collaboration projects like this happens, where
Right.
I made some code and I pushed it, but then some other developer has found some other bug and they fixed it, and then they've pushed code from their end, right? So that would happen by using Git, which is I push the code to GitHub, sort of, quote unquote, uploaded the code, and then the other developer would pull the code from GitHub and then make the changes and then push again. So two people working on the same code base, and once it is uploaded to GitHub, it will automatically be updated in the service. So this is how collaboration would happen in the real world. Next one, this point was to create a prediction endpoint. So this is the part where Pawan, you were mentioning, how do I integrate my code with the GitHub, with the server, right? So the way I would do it is I'll just create an endpoint called test predict,
Okay.
and this method name can be anything. And this service that I have written, this method predict one. Again, this is a simple Python method. There's nothing special about it.
Right.
Here, I called it using, directly in the code. But now what we'll do is we'll just import this here, and then we'll just call
Okay.
it.
Got it. So that service is now acting as a package which you are importing here, and then you are using that function. You have the user defined function predict one. You are routing it using app.
Correct. That's correct.
Got it. Got it.
So I'll just expose this. Sorry. Seems to be working. So I'll just call predict one. Yeah. Yeah, so I just made a new route called test predict. And if I call it, I'm simply calling the predict function that I've written, when I was integrating this in the service.
Right.
And then the result, which is in the form of prediction and confidence, I'm reading it back to the user, by converting it into a JSON format. I'll just show this. Let me run the server. This is again on my local. Yeah. So I've run the server. I've defined this test predict endpoint, and when I call it, I get a result, similar result that I got earlier, when I was making the result. So this is the integration from your service to your Flask application. So this is how you make it public, on your local. Once this is done in local, I'll just push it to again remote, and it's the same process. Everybody would be able to get it. This is the basic integration of your model with the endpoint. Any questions?
No.
No, no. Proceed.
Sure. So now coming to the other question that you asked, Pawan. Now we have actually deployed this to Heroku. When we did it, actually there's a lot of things that are automated by the pipelines that is done. In a traditional process, what you would do is that the Python code that you have, which is this server, um, you would want to basically convert this into a zip. You'd want to convert this into a zip, copy this zip onto a server, and then unpack the zip there, and then start the Flask application just the way we did here, right?
Okay.
That's the traditional process of doing this. So all this process, actually copying the code into a server and then unpacking it and then running it, all of that is automated by Heroku for us here. I mean, there's a lot of complexity that is managed by using Heroku. So it's not only the deployment that is managed by Heroku, it also manages scaling. So when you asked about the resources that the application uses, if you were to deploy the application on your on-prem your server, a server that you are managing, uh, you would face issues like maybe the app is getting a lot of hits, so there is a lot of requirement for RAM, right? And
Right.
one machine is not able to bear it. So you get problems like that where um, you'd want to constantly keep monitoring the app, and if you're getting a lot of hits, you want to replicate the app in different servers and then add a load balancer and basically you know increase the complexity of the app and all that. And then you'll also want to take care of the security. So if you are putting it on your server, your local machine, you'd want to think about what is the firewall rules, I'm allowing this port, and what is the security and all that. So that's super complex, right? And it's hard for a beginner to do that. So by hosting it in an managed platform like Heroku or AWS, all this process gets automated, right? So which means if there's a lot of hits that are coming to the server, and the Heroku finds out that, hey, look, a lot of my resources are being used, it will automatically copy the app into multiple servers, and then each server will bear just a part of the burden, right? So all this is managed for you by Heroku or
So just
AWS.
one question. So while copying to multiple server, does Heroku takes care of the security? Because let's say if it's a confidential information that the app is using.
Yes. So security, Heroku, again, I've not worked extensively on Heroku, but Heroku is a very, uh,
So what about AWS? Let's if
yeah,
AWS the popular
yeah,
cloud. So
yes.
does
So,
AWS manages the security, or something
yes.
is
So,
done from the production side to keep it
yeah.
secure?
Heroku again is a very simplistic app where you don't have to think about a lot of things, which includes the security, the network, and all of that. If you are deploying it in AWS, you have control over a lot of things, which is the ports that you want to allow, from which IPs do you want the request to come. How do you want to manage the scaling? Do you want to manage, scale it infinitely, or do you want to put a limit on it? Or do you want the application to be called by only a particular set of IPs and all that? Lot of configuration you can do from if you are using AWS. So if you're going for production, you probably might want to think about AWS. I mean, given that you can manage the complexity of AWS itself. So this is where the specialization of the DevOps engineer comes. So DevOps engineer understands how to set the firewall up, how to set the scaling, how to set up the pipelines and all of that. The DevOps engineer would be specialized in understanding all of that. As a beginner or as a backend developer, front end developer, it will be very hard for you to deploy it on AWS. So for a simpler version, we just went ahead with Heroku.
So for a real application deployment, you need to hire a DevOps engineer who is like specialized in handling these things.
That's correct. That's correct. Because a lot of things can go wrong. If you, by mistake, open some port which is not supposed to be open, your application is at risk. And once this application is public, actually you'll be getting a lot of hits to the application by something called as scanners, which are automated applications which try to access your app, hack it, access your app, and then actually get your data. So a lot of things can go wrong if you go into public. So you would want a specialist who understands how to handle the security of it. And you probably, if you're building a fintech app, you probably would want to go with a more sophisticated application like AWS, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure, which gives you more fine-tuned control over a lot of things,
Okay, got it.
right? Right. Yeah. So that's Heroku. Again, Heroku makes your life easier by automating a lot of stuff. However, one shortcoming of Heroku is that, or managed hosting platform, is that your code is now running on Heroku's server. So that server is owned by Heroku, and then all the data that you hit goes to Heroku's server. So if you're building a fintech app, you probably want to be sure that Heroku is actually not accessing your data, because you want to make your app very secure. So if you're building an application for fintech, especially for banking, you probably would want to go for self-hosting, which is you buy your own computer, you put your app, you run a server on it, and then you put your app on it. And then there are, to manage the resource sharing, scaling, and all of that, there are already softwares like Kubernetes or Docker, which will help you in that part. So if you're talking about a fintech app, you probably want to err on the safer side, and you probably would want to go for self-hosting because you don't want your data to be going to someone else,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's self and managed hostings. And yeah, so now looking at what we have done, we have made the app public, which is, I've made it open to the world, and anybody can actually open the predict endpoint, right? So now that it is made public, you've actually opened your app to a lot of threat vectors, which is people a lot of people constantly trying to hack your app, get into your app, get your data, blackmail your users. If you've heard of news like, credit cards data being stolen from Target, or whichever way it is, this is basically because you have hosted the app on the public, and people are constantly trying to get to your data and then download the data and hold ransom
Yeah.
using that. You want to be really, really sure that your app works the way you'd want to. So the bare minimum that you'd want to do is add authentication authorization, which is, if you're, for example, giving an option to predict it, user data, you don't want anybody in the public to be able to access it, right? Because it's confidential data. You want to make sure that all of that is secured by a login. It could be in a person, only if they give the username and password, only then they would be able to access the data, right? So that's
Right.
authorized the users. And then authentication is, if um, yeah, authentication is, if I'm accessing data, I should be able to see only my data. I should not be able to see somebody else's data. That would again be a big security issue. So you want to be really sure that all of this is handled effectively. And it's like authorization, authentication itself is like a very super complex topic. There is SAML, there is OAuth 2.0, JWT tokens, and multiple different ways in which you can do authorization and authentication. But however, to simplify all of that, you already have services like Auth0 or Okta, which basically handle a lot of complexity for you, and you just have to integrate it in your application. So, as a summary, you probably would not want to go with whatever we have built into production. You would want to make your application really secure. You can do that by adding strong authentication and authorization. And now coming to the performance and a little bit about security, you probably would be better off using a new server called Fast API, which gives you better performance and gives you better functionalities like validating the data. If a user is supposed to give user ID, are they giving user ID, or are they putting the name, or there are multiple things like SQL injection and all of that. All of that will be handled by simplified by Fast API. So in production, probably again it's a personal choice, but objectively Fast API is a little better than Flask. Right. We have trained the model as a scientist. We've given the model to the backend developer. The backend developer has integrated it in the service, made it available to the public, made it available through an API. The DevOps engineer took over from there. They deployed it on Heroku. Now it's accessible to the whole world. So our first two parts are done. And then the last major part that we have is DB integration. Now the app is running, the predictions are running. We are able to get the predictions from an API. Now, what's lacking in this is that the app does not really have memory. Meaning, if we have a data of, let's say, 100 users, there is no place where the data is being stored currently, right? To do that, we want to store the data in kind of a sophisticated Excel sheet, if you will, right? To do that, we'd want to use a database. Multiple databases are available out there. So for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just go ahead with MySQL. Although if you're going for a table database, you probably would want to use Postgres rather than MySQL, because of multiple functionalities that it provides. Right. And to integrate with MySQL, we'll be using a library called a PB. Again, it's something similar to the library that you have already used. This the library that you have used
SQL
in
Alchemy we have used.
SQL Alchemy. It's similar to SQL Alchemy, but it's lighter. So I'm just using PV, and we'll be interacting to the database with the database through code. Right. Now, coming to the code part, again, first we'll have to set up the database, and then we'll just see that the database is set up correctly using Workbench, which you have already done, and then we'll be connecting to the database from code. We'll be loading some sample data just to simulate users, using your platform and getting response, and then we'll query the data using the ORMs. Yeah, to deploy the database, we'll use a service called Event. So there are multiple services again where you can deploy your database. AWS also has, AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure. All these clouds also have, offerings for database. But to make it simpler, I'm just going ahead with this service called Event.
Okay, so just one question, Ketan. Here we are not using the MySQL hosted on our machine. Rather, we will be using on cloud.
That's correct.
Okay.
Because we are building a production application.
Okay. Got it.
Right. I'll just go with MySQL. I'll go with the free trial. Again, since the application is sitting in Europe, I'll be choosing Ireland. I'll come to the significance of the location once I get to the front end. Let's yeah, let's give a name. Right. Yeah. So my database is being set up. Let's see. I want to download this CS certificate. Right. Yeah. So I just downloaded the CS certificate. I'll use
So this
this.
certificate you works as an authenticator.
Uh, kind of, yes. Yeah, you can. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, to simplify it, you can think of it as an authenticator for your app. Just put it in there. I'll open Workbench.
So now from the workbench installed on your laptop, you will be connecting to that certificate.
That's correct.
Okay.
Actually,
It creates a connection on the cloud rather than your own machine.
that's correct.
So
So
you are
I'm
not
connected.
connecting to your local host. We were using the local host, our machine itself. Here he's connecting to the cloud.
To the
Ivan.io. Yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah. So let me just.
Because he needs more storage, right? He needs more space.
Yeah, and then yes, of course, and then it's managed on the cloud.
Manage.
Yep. So there is no storage crunch you can.
Okay, yeah.
And then all those security stuff will also come where the cloud provider is going to provide you
The security. Okay.
yeah.
Let me just copy this password.
Got it. And then it will have same kind of syntax as we have done, connecting Python using MySQL connector to database and use the authenticator as these authenticators.
For some reason. Let's try again.
Here is configuring the workbench.
For some reason, this is behaving weird. Let me just copy it from here. Here's the default DB schema. Uh, I don't know for some reason my laptop is giving this issue again and again. So might have to test it a few times. Just give me 1 minute.
MySQL connection always is very troublesome. In our
Yep.
lecture also, some students were able to connect. For some, it was throwing some error.
It's
And
it's it's possibly an issue with the workbench. I think there's some bug in this. I'm not sure though. It's- I've been facing this issue from yesterday. It just randomly connects. It's taking some time, but this is a bit important to do it. Weird. 1117. Yeah, I don't know for
now,
what reason it randomly works. Uh, yeah. So yes. So now I've deployed this. MySQL server. I can actually give the credentials if you'd want to test it out.
no, it's fine. Uh,
Yeah, so I've deployed the server. You probably would have deployed it on your local machine, but now I've deployed it on cloud because it makes
right,
it
right.
100% easier. No tables because I've not
Yes,
created
yes.
anything else yet. So traditionally, you'd want to use something like create table, and then you'd want to add all the
Right, right,
columns.
right.
But
These things we
since
have done here. You
yes,
just
so
can show if you connect this cloud with your application. I think you will be using MySQL connector to connect
that's
it.
That's correct. So now we've set up the database instance. Again, that will be done by either a DB admin or your DevOps
Right,
person, depending on the complexity of your app. And then we've checked it in Workbench. Now we'll connect it with our app. To work with our database, we'll open this file database.py. Some code
right.
is already
Yes.
written here. Let me just quickly fill these things. Just copy. Right. So yeah, so with this, I should be able to connect to my database. Now,
Yes.
I want to create tables. So then for user, we are having these fields. So I'll copy these as these. Float field.
So Ketan, actually, you can skip this process because they have done this.
Yeah.
Only difference is that you are deploying on cloud. So now, because we are running short of time, can you please proceed like with the slides? What's the next stage? Once you have connected with the DB integration, then deployment on AWS.
Yes, yes. Just 1 minute. I'll. Yes. So this is how your code complete would work. So you can see here that. Yeah, so you can see here that I just did choices equals, and it is already giving me the code that I might want to write. Right.
This is because of Kodi.
Cody, that's correct.
Yep.
So it makes my life like very
Easier.
easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
if you're going for coding, you might want to install something like Kodi or GitHub Copilot.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. So Copilot is a paid version. You have to pay for it.
that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Right. So yeah.
But
So this
what?
is how you do.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Continue. Continue.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. This is how you basically simplify your development. I do not want to type. I do not want to
No,
type
it's
the
fine.
whole
You
thing.
can proceed like the next step.
Yeah.
You got
So
it.
I'll
Like
just
then you'll be connecting, and then
yeah. So I just do this, and then the whole thing is done for me. Yeah, so what I'll do instead of coding the whole thing, I'll just copy this stuff from the project that I've already done. Sorry.
You need to practice like 10 times.
yeah, he has been doing things for past 10 years.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's just way over my head now.
Too much
Ah,
info.
Too much, yeah. Oh,
sorry about that.
no,
I
you're
mean, like
fine.
But
you can have.
Thank
that
you for
it,
showing us this.
if you listen to this video, like it's like a
Yeah,
full
this is what I'm gonna do.
end
Exactly.
to
I need
end.
to
Yes.
practice. But I need to do it together so we can, like, just in case technical issue. Maybe like next time.
Yeah, you can just write to me or write to Ketan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've basically now we are connecting to the database using our code.
Right.
First we'd want to connect to the database. That's it. So basically, I'm not typing anything now. I've just
Yeah,
defined
yeah,
the
got it,
tables,
got it.
and then I'm just running this.
Right.
Huh. So now I can see that if I go back to my workbench and I refresh my database, I can see that I have
Yeah, your
tables here.
tables will come. Yep.
One for user and one for
Right,
payment data.
right,
So
right,
it's
right.
probably something that you have done
Yes,
earlier.
yes, yes, yes.
And the tables are empty because we
Right,
did not
right.
add data yet. I'll quickly add data. So again, this is not something you are supposed to understand. This part I've just generated a couple of
Yep, yep.
files. I'm just generating sample data by reading the file,
Got it,
the
got it.
data file, and then I'm loading the data. There's a script called data loader. You can use that to load the data into your database.
Right, right. And then after connecting this, like, can you go to the last stage because we else you will not be able to cover it.
Yeah, it's almost done. It's almost done. So the next step would be just getting the data from the database and then showing it to the users. Yeah. So I've uploaded the data. Now it should be visible in the workbench. If I just do select rows, now you can see that I have data about different users
Okay.
and the credit
Right, right.
limit, education, sex, marital status, age. All this I've actually populated data from the code.
Okay.
Right. So we set up the database. We explored the workbench. We connected to database from the from the code. We've loaded the sample data. Now we want to get the data in the code. So for that reason, we'll go to our service back. Uh, Here we want to get details of, let's say,
Yes, yes.
details. Given a user ID, we want to get details about the user, which is what
Right.
is the age, credit limit, all of that, along with the payment data. So again, I'll use Cody. I'll, yeah, so you can see that basically I'm not
Yes.
really typing anything. Um,
It's okay. You can fasten up the process.
yeah, so let's see. Right. Yeah, so we've written an API endpoint. It was a bit fast. We've written an API endpoint, which is user slash user ID, which takes the user ID and
Right.
then queries the database and then gives you all the details about the user. Right.
Right.
So let me just test this out. Yeah, so now I can actually change the user ID, and for each user, now I'm getting the data. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
this is actually what is being used in the app. When I, let's say, select a user, this is the API that is being called, and I'm showing that data in the front end to the user. You have the payment details, and then you have the user details.
Yeah.
All of that you can see in this API, right? So this is the backend, and you use the front end to basically make the data pretty and then make it so that users understand it. Right. We have deployed the database. We've connected with Workbench. We have loaded the sample data. We have queried the sample data using code. Now
Right.
we just to implement a couple of methods which will allow us to first get all the users from the database, and then do prediction using a user ID. Uh, First, users from the database.
Ketan, can you now just proceed to the front end development and talk about the rest? Because then you will not be able to finish. We are just having 30 more minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, once this is done, it is done. Once I deploy this, it is
Okay.
done. So I get 20 users. So I'm just quickly doing this. Yeah. So we've done a couple of things. We've listed the number of users. So basically, whatever users you have in the database, we've written a method to get all the users from the database, and we've also done a method to get details of each user, right? Now, this is what we're using in the application. When I first load the app, I can see a list of users. So this comes from this API, which we did to get a list of users. List of users. And once I select the user, we'll get details about the user. So that's something that I'm getting by using this API,
Got it.
right? So this is how the backend would look.
Right, right.
Uh, Let me quickly finish the prediction as well.
So what you have done, you have set the backend for listing all the user, selecting the user, and doing the prediction, and then now you are going to connect it with the front end,
Correct. So
isn't it? Got it.
correct. We have done three APIs. One is to get list the users.
Got it. Got it.
We
And
saw
then
the list of
selecting the
users.
user. So on the back end, it looks like this, but on the front end, it's going to give a drop down and all. So you'll be having some widgets, features, and all those things on the front end.
Correct, correct. So now we have three APIs.
Got it.
We now that we are done, we deployed it.
On the Git. Okay.
We push it to Git.
Okay.
Oh, damn. So this is yeah. So basically, we put this to Git.
Okay.
It's not allowing me to do that. Git. Yeah. So yeah. So now I've developed the backend. It was a bit
Right.
fast.
Right. Right.
And then we are getting the data from the database, and then we pushed it to Git, which finishes our whole backend.
Back end development. Yep.
Yes. Some considerations for your database: you would want to make sure that again the access to the database is very secure. You don't want the database to be accessed by anybody, and you want to take regular backups of the data so that if the database goes down, if the database stops working, then you'll not lose your data. And then obviously you don't want the database to be accessible to the public, so you do some kind of firewall or networking to make sure that the database is not used by cannot be connected by anybody that they want. Yeah. Now coming to same question that you would have about. I mean, the same question that you would have about the hosting. You'd ask about database as well, which is, do you want to go for a private hosting or do you want to go for managed hosting? I would suggest that if you have less confidential data, it is always better to go for a managed database service, because there are a lot of configurations that can be done in database. And if you go for a managed service, all of that is automated and taken care for you, so that you don't have to think about it. But if you're managing some secure data like a fintech app, you probably would want to manage it yourself. Now, coming to the database itself, there are different databases. So we have used SQL. Apart from SQL, there are already other options like MongoDB, which can be used for graph database, and Neo4j. Sorry, MongoDB for document JSON-like structure, and Neo4j for graph structure. Right. Um, we are done with training, deployment, database integration. Now the front-end integration. Will not spend too much time on this because the Next.js itself is a big topic, and there's a lot of things that can be done with Next.js. But I'll just talk about how you would see Next.js being deployed, right? So again, here I would assume that your front end is already developed, and then you would want it to be you want to deploy your front end application so that it's accessible to the public. So for that, we'll be using AWS. And we'll be using a service called Amplify. Amplify is again something similar to Heroku, but specialized for front-end apps like Next.js, React.js, uh, and other
So there
front-end.
is a possibility like backend deployed on a different cloud and frontend deployed on a different cloud, or
Yes,
do
yes. If your app is fairly complex, you'd want to deploy your backend on a on a different cloud. You can put it on AWS, on running on Flask server, and the front end you'll be using Next.js to build that. Again, that'll have its own repository similar to the backend repository that you have, and you can deploy it in somewhere else. And
okay.
if your app is fairly complex, you would want to do that, because the team that is working on the backend and the team that is working on the front end, they're different. um, and then you don't want to mix the complexity.
Got it.
Yeah, so same process that I did with Heroku, just pushing a few buttons here and there. uh, I'm allowing connecting my AWS Amplify with my repository, and then similar to Heroku, I'll be getting a list of repositories here. Yeah. So I built this project, Risk Radar Web App. I've selected that um, branch. So this is where you'd want to integrate your backend with your front end. So now we've deployed the backend.
Right.
Um, the details about all the users and all, we are getting it from the
Backend.
Heroku URL, backend Heroku URL, which
Hero.
is
Got it.
radar, this part. I'll just copy this, and when I'm deploying it in the front end, I'll put it in my environment variables. I'll just call it URL API. Again, basically, I'm just telling the front end that if basically telling it, if hey, if you're getting data, you would have to use this URL to get whatever data you want, and
Got
anything
it.
that you want to do prediction and all that, you can do using that. So yeah, so that's about it. I select save, and then I go ahead for deployment. Once it's done, again, it takes about a couple of minutes, and then we are live with our web app, right?
Okay.
So in a couple of minutes, again, this should be live, and then the URL, it should be accessible by master dot the something dot amplifyapp.com, and then you can share it with the world, and anybody can use it. So that's about the front end deployment. So yeah, so that's about it. Yeah, I just realized that it's actually might be a bit too much to cover all of these topics
Yeah, yeah.
at
So
once.
you
It's
can
Um,
talk
way too
about the
much.
yeah way ahead, and then we can close the session for any questions if they have.
Thank you so much. Anyways, thanks man for everything. It was
sure,
amazing.
sure. So,
Done from the beginning. But
He
I
was
think
actually developing the whole app now.
exactly this is the thing. But we actually learned with Pawan that it's going to be definitely like so many people working. This is the thing. We had we had to know what was done in every step of the way and what was needed. But then we didn't have to do it all in like
All on your
he
own.
said that we could do it one
He
person
did
per.
he did all by on his
This is the
own.
thing. It's
So
amazing. Oh my god.
that's why he's giving you a glimpse of everything. But now he's a CTO, so he's more on a supervisory role here
Yeah,
where
I
he's
guess I
taking.
kind of guessed. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially so.
Yeah,
But
so he takes care of, so different teams are there. So
yeah,
if they have any issue, they report to him, and then he gets to know that yeah,
yeah,
he's having this issue.
which is amazing.
But to understand the full flow,
Yeah,
you have to make your hands dirty.
this is really hard.
Else it will be
Definitely
like
gonna, we're
a
definitely gonna try it. It's just
yeah.
so
Else
amazing.
it will be more. So go for a full deployment of a minimalistic app like the way he has done.
Yeah,
So then you will be a bit comfortable to understand the integration. So he has shown many
but
things
the thing
like
is, we don't have GitHub Go Copilot. That's
it's
one
a
thing.
paid stuff.
Yeah, he
So
has it already. This is
yeah,
how he can
he has
create the
access
stuff.
through his
So we try it.
company.
Yeah,
yeah, you can use this Kodi AI. So that's a better a good alternative for GitHub, and it's free as well. So sourcecraft.com/Kodi. If you just create an account here, you can. There's a plugin for that, and it'll give you all the suggestions about how to do different things. So I would recommend doing that, especially if you're just starting out developing the app.
Yeah, so it has been deployed now. See.
Yeah. So now our app is deployed. Whatever we built. So this is the data that we're getting from the details.
So some
So
questions, Ketan, because what do you see like is going to be future prospect of AI and all those things from technical perspective, and as an individual, what skill set they need to learn or to train themselves?
oh yeah. So AI is moving so fast. Uh, it's hard even to a person who is into AI. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, we can see the app, the one that you have shared. This is
yeah.
the web app.
Uh, so yeah, so that's something that we just actually built it in the session and deployed it.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyways,
you have built it in the
um,
session itself.
yeah. So AI is moving so fast. Even as a person who is actually hands-on working in AI, I get surprised about the different advancements that we see. But one main thing I can see happening now and in the near future is moving all the data and the basically interface with the websites from a normal interaction to an agent-based interaction. Meaning, now let's say I want to get a report, right? Let's say I'm a CFO or something like that, and I want to see a report of whatever financial activities that has happened. Right now there's a dashboard that is given, and I have to click a few buttons, and then I'll see a report there.
Right.
But now moving forward, likely that will be done by an AI agent, meaning the finance person will just ask the AI, "Hey, look, I want to understand how my sales are, how my sales are in the past 3 years, and I want to see it project on a project by project basis." Right? I just type it in English, and then the AI will be giving me back the data. Right? So all of that would be done by AI agents. So the near future, very important, and that's almost a certainty that happen is integrating AI agents. So basically trying to understand how you can use chat GPT to make it under chat GPT, or llama, if you want to go for open source, or any other model, understand your business, your data, and then give it results in the way you want. That's
Right.
something that will happen in the next 1 year or so. I mean, for the next one
So
year.
what would be left with the humans? Like they should focus more on the inference from the data, the analysis, and
Yeah,
the business decisions.
yeah. So business decisions is one. Creativity would be another thing that would be done by humans. So for example, if I'm a marketing manager and I want to run some campaign, right? I can ask AI to give me suggestions, but it will be up to the humans to understand what kind of campaigns that I had to run, so that I can expect more number of leads, right? So creativity will still be in the purview of humans, at least
Hmm.
to, to whatever extent that AI is developed. And also, AI will, I mean, I can see that AI is automating a lot of jobs, but it will also help a good developer become better, right? So when I was developing the app, when I was using Cody, um, Cody was suggesting me what code to write, right? But the logic of the application and the details about where I should put the database, where I should put the details about the model and all of that, that was decided by me, right? So while AI can assist humans, the people, finance people who audit stuff, or marketing people or technical people, it is the actual driver, at least so far, is still humans. I don't know if that will change sometime in the future, because things are moving so fast. You never know, what AI would be able to do. But agents is super important. LLMs and large language models, and probably if you're wanting to get deeper into AI, you might want to look into reinforcement learning and agents like that, which will you know basically do experimentation for you. If you want to do, for example, portfolio optimization, it will do different experimentation. It will give you the best strategy that you can use to increase your whatever assets, or hedge your risks and all of that. So AI reinforcement learning might be something that might be coming up in the future.
Right. So, Ketan, we'll be ending the session. Really nice, like full end-to-end demonstration, and like
Yeah,
it's a tough
yeah,
thing to deploy an app while in the session.
yeah. No,
Everything from back
I
end to
just
front end.
Thank you so
So
much.
it was very insightful. And then I would just request the participant to switch on your camera for a short time so that we can have a snapshot. So can you please switch on your camera and then. Yeah, I'll upload the whole lecture.
Just a second.
Yeah, Gashan, if possible, can you switch on your camera? Just for a while, I'll just take a snapshot.
2 seconds. I will leave and I'll rejoin real quick.
It's okay, I'll just take a snapshot. No, not an issue. Don't worry. One second. Okay, Ketan. So, any more questions for him because he gave his precious time, all these 2 hours, and he's already working in a company where he's a CTO, so he has lot many responsibilities. But thanks for your time, especially giving a full, because it's tough to get a course where a single person is giving end-to-end demonstration. So what happens if we learn in bits and pieces? It's tough to connect all those stuffs. Okay, so if a single resource person, if he can give a full glimpse of end-to-end deployment, all your queries like are getting satisfied, or you are getting an answer which you expect. But if, because I was also going through all those lectures and it was tough for me to connect everything. So, but once we have a person who has done everything scratch to scratch, so he can give a full macro picture. So thanks, Ketan. It was very insightful. We'll
Thank you
try
so
to.
much. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything, Ketan, you want to say?
Yeah, so I just want to mention that I have whatever app we have developed, I have given a link to you,
Yes.
Pavan.
Yes.
So if you want to set it up, I mean, basically, if you want to understand the whole thing into and a good way would be to go through the video again, and then to follow along. The apps is hosted on GitHub. You would be able to do that, and whatever steps we followed, you can just deploy Workbench, deploy Heroku, and all that, and you should be up and running with your own fintech app.
Right.
All right. Thank you
I,
so much. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Good
thank
luck.
you,
Best of luck for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.